The proudest day of my life became the day my own son, my only son, looked me straight in the eye and told his new wealthy friends that I was nothing more than the hired help. Hi everyone. Most of you know me as Grandma Eleanor. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 72 years old, and I'm from a quiet little town in Ohio. The kind of town where everyone knows your name, and the leaves turn the most beautiful shade of gold in the autumn. This is a story I've kept locked away in the deepest corner of my heart for over 25 years. It's a heavy key to turn, you know. Even my own daughter, who came along much later in my life, doesn't know the full, crushing weight of what I'm about to share. My friends, the lovely women I play cards with every Tuesday, they know a piece of it, a sliver of the pain, but not the whole truth. To be honest, I think a part of me was too ashamed to ever speak it all aloud. But holding on to a secret like this, it's like carrying a stone in your pocket. At first, you barely notice it, but over the years, it just gets heavier and heavier until it wears a hole right through the fabric. Before I begin, if you could please do an old woman a favor and like this video and subscribe to our channel. It might sound silly, but telling this story feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Your support, knowing you're out there listening, it feels like a steady hand on my back, giving me the strength to finally share what I've kept hidden in the dark for so long. My story doesn't really begin on that awful graduation day. It doesn't even begin with the birth of my son, David. No, my story began long before that, in the year 1968, with a promise I made to myself under a canopy of stars, sitting next to the man who would become my husband. His name was Robert. Oh, Robert. He was not a man of flowery words or grand, sweeping gestures. His love was a quiet, steady thing. It was in the way he'd bring me a cup of coffee in the morning, just the way I liked it, without me ever having to ask. It was in the way he'd hold my hand while we walked, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. He worked at the local auto shop, and his hands were always calloused and stained with a bit of grease. But to me, they were the kindest, most capable hands in the entire world. We grew up simple. My father was a construction worker, and I can still smell the mix of sawdust and sweat on his clothes when he'd come home and lift me up in a bear hug. My mother was a homemaker, and our little house always smelled of baking bread and bleach. They didn't have much to give me in the way of material things, but they gave me something far more valuable, a spine made of steel and a heart full of empathy. They taught me that integrity wasn't about what you did when people were watching. It was about who you were when you were all alone. They taught me that hard work wasn't a punishment, but a privilege. Robert and I shared those values. Our dreams were simple, too. A small house with a little garden, a couple of kids running around in the yard, and a life built on honesty and love. We saved every penny. I worked as a seamstress out of our tiny apartment, mending clothes for folks in town, and he took every extra shift he could get at the garage. And then, after 3 years of marriage, our biggest dream came true. David was born. Oh, the moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I can't even describe it. He was so tiny, so perfect. A full head of dark hair, just like his father's, and these big, curious eyes that seemed to look right into my soul. I remember tracing the little curve of his ear and whispering a promise to him, right then and there. I promised him I would always protect him, always provide for him, and that my love for him would be the one constant, unchanging thing in his life. My heart felt like it had cracked wide open, overflowing with a kind of love I never knew was possible. Robert was just smitten. He'd come home from the garage, scrub his hands raw until they were clean, and just hold David for hours, rocking him and humming old tunes. David was our whole world, our sun, our moon, and all our stars. For 5 wonderful, beautiful years, our life was perfect. It was everything we had ever dreamed of. And then, the world tilted on its axis. Robert was in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. He was gone in an instant. The police officer at my door, his words sounded like they were coming from underwater. I felt numb. A hollow, ringing silence filled our little home, where laughter used to be. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. For weeks, I just went through the motions, a ghost in my own life. But then, one morning, little David, my sweet 5-year-old boy, crawled into my bed and put his little hand on my cheek. He looked at me with those big, serious eyes of his and said, "Don't be sad, Mommy. I'll take care of you." In that moment, something inside me clicked into place. The fog began to lift, replaced by a fierce, burning determination. He was right. I couldn't fall apart. I had a promise to keep. I had him. He was my purpose. So, I got to work. And gosh, did I work. My seamstress work wasn't enough to support us both, not by a long shot. So, I took a job waiting tables at the diner downtown in the mornings. Then, in the afternoons, I cleaned houses for some of the wealthier families on the other side of town. And at night, after David was asleep, I'd sit at my sewing machine until my eyes burned and my back ached, mending and hemming. I became a machine fueled by coffee and love. It was hard. There were nights I'd fall into bed so exhausted I could barely move. There were times I'd stand in the grocery store, counting out change, my heart pounding with the fear that I wouldn't have enough. But it was never, ever a burden. Not for a second, because every single sacrifice was for him. When he needed new shoes, I patched up my own. When he wanted to join the school's baseball team, I took on an extra cleaning client to pay for the uniform and equipment. I didn't have a social life. I didn't buy new clothes. My entire existence revolved around one single goal: giving David the life his father and I had dreamed for him. And for a long time, he was the sweetest, most loving boy you could ever imagine. He was my little shadow. He'd leave me little drawings on the kitchen table. He'd tell me I was the best cook in the world, even when I just made simple macaroni and cheese from a box. When I'd come home, bone-tired from cleaning a stranger's house, he'd run to the door and wrap his arms around my legs. His hug was like a magic elixir. It washed away all the exhaustion, all the worry. He was my pride and joy. I'd look at him and see his father's smile, and I'd know I was doing the right thing. The changes started slowly. So slowly, in fact, that at first I barely noticed them. It was like the turning of a season. You don't see the leaves changing color one by one. You just wake up one day and realize the whole forest looks different. It began around middle school. He started getting invited to birthday parties at the homes of his new friends, the very homes I often cleaned. I remember dropping him off at the end of a long, winding driveway that led to a house that looked more like a mansion. "David," he asked me to drop him at the end of the street so he could walk the rest of the way. "Why, honey?" I asked, confused. "I can just pull up to the door." He wouldn't look at me. He just mumbled, "It's fine, Mom. I'll just walk." No. It was a small thing, but it felt odd. It was the first time I felt he was ashamed of our old beat-up car. Ashamed of me. A little paper cut on my heart. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was just growing up and wanting to be more independent. Then, in high school, it became more pronounced. He needed brand-name sneakers, not the perfectly good ones from the discount store. He needed a certain type of jacket, the one all the popular kids wore. The price tag made my stomach clench, but I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in his eyes. So, I took on another cleaning job, this time on Saturdays, my only day off. I told him I was just helping out a friend. I didn't want him to feel guilty. I just wanted him to be happy, to fit in. Was it my fault? Did I spoil him? I don't know. Back then, I thought I was just being a good mother. I thought I was giving him the tools he needed to build a better life than the one I had. I wanted him to have everything. I just never imagined that everything wouldn't include me. The real shift, the one that set us on the path to that terrible graduation day, happened when he started dating Jessica in his senior year of high school. Jessica came from one of the wealthiest families in town. Her father was a surgeon. Her mother was on the board of every charity. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Polished, from her perfectly styled blonde hair to her immaculate expensive shoes. The first time David brought her over for dinner, I spent 2 days cleaning our tiny house from top to bottom. I wanted everything to be perfect. I cooked his favorite meal, pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the way my mother taught me to make it. Jessica walked in and her smile was polite, but her eyes scanned our small living room, with its worn-out armchair and second-hand furniture, as if she were touring a museum exhibit on poverty. I saw a flicker of something in her gaze, not pity, but a kind of detached, clinical curiosity. Throughout dinner, she was perfectly cordial, but she had a way of speaking that made me feel small. She talked about their family's summer trip to Europe, the new car her parents had bought her for her 17th birthday, her plans to attend a prestigious out-of-state university. David, my David, just hung on her every word, his eyes shining with an admiration that I hadn't seen in a long time. He barely touched his pot roast. After that, things started to change more quickly. David started using bigger words, correcting my grammar in a way that felt less like helping, and more like a gentle, constant criticism. He'd say things like, "Mom, it's not ain't, it's isn't," or "People don't really say that anymore." His tone was patient, as if he were teaching a child. It was suffocating. He started spending all his time at Jessica's house. Our little home, once his sanctuary, became nothing more than a place to sleep and change clothes. When I'd ask about his day, I'd get one-word answers. The easy, flowing conversations we used to have were gone, replaced by a strained, uncomfortable silence. The worst part was seeing him through Jessica's eyes. I started to see the worn spots on our couch, the chipped paint on the kitchen cabinets, my own tired, wrinkled face in the mirror. She never said a single unkind word to me directly. She didn't have to. Her very presence in our life was a judgment. It was a silent testament to everything we weren't. And I saw my son, my sweet boy, internalizing that judgment. He was starting to look at his own life, his own mother, with the same cool, detached gaze as his girlfriend. My heart ached with a deep, chilling fear, a cold dread that coiled in my stomach every time I saw them together. I was losing him. He was drifting away from me, pulled by the tide of a world I couldn't afford, a world I didn't belong in. And I had no idea how to bring him back. I just kept working, kept saving, praying that my love and my sacrifice would be enough to anchor him. I was saving for his college education. His dream was to go to the same prestigious university as Jessica, and the tuition was a number that made me feel dizzy. But I was determined. I would give him that, even if it took every last drop of energy I had. Maybe, I thought, maybe if I could just give him this one big thing, this key to the life he so desperately wanted, he would see. He would remember who I was and how much I loved him. Gosh, I was so naive. I was laying the very bricks of the wall he would one day build between us. I wish I could tell you that I saw the storm coming, that I recognized the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't see the whole picture. All you see is the next step you have to take. For me, that next step was his university tuition. It was a mountain. A giant, terrifying mountain of money that I had to climb, $1 at a time. At first, the little hurts were easy to excuse. David was a senior in high school, and he was under a lot of pressure. That's what I told myself. He was trying to get into this prestigious school, the same one as Jessica, and the application process was grueling. I'd come home from scrubbing floors, my back a solid knot of pain, and my hands raw from bleach, and he'd be at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. I'd ask him, "How's it going, sweetie? Can I get you anything?" And he'd just wave a hand, not even looking up. "I'm fine, Mom. Just trying to focus." The word, Mom, started to sound different. It used to be a warm, loving word. Now, it sounded like an interruption, a sigh. I was a distraction from his very important new life. I would retreat to my room, quiet as a mouse, and just listen to the sound of his pen, scratching on the paper, telling myself, this is for his future. This is what a good mother does. The requests for money became more frequent. Application fees, test prep courses, a special calculator he absolutely yearned to have. Each request was like a small paper cut. It stung, but it was manageable. I never once told him we couldn't afford it. I'd just smile and say, "Don't you worry, honey, I've got it covered." Then I'd call Mrs. Gable, one of my cleaning clients, and ask if she had any extra work that week. I'd tell her I was saving up for a new sewing machine. A little white lie to protect my pride. Or maybe to protect him from the reality of my struggle. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, soaking my aching hands in a bowl of warm water and Epsom salts. It was the only thing that seemed to take the swelling down. David walked in with Jessica. They had been at her house studying. Jessica looked at my hands in the bowl and gave a little, tinkling laugh. "Oh, Eleanor, you look like you're conducting a science experiment. What's all that for?" I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I tried to pull my hands out of the water, but they just looked red and puffy. "Oh, it's nothing, dear. Just a little tired from work." David glanced at my hands, and for a second I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Annoyance? Embarrassment? He quickly looked away. "Mom, you should really use those rubber gloves I bought you. Your hands look rough." Rough. That word echoed in my head all night. My hands were rough because they'd scrubbed the toilets and washed the floors and mended the clothes that paid for the very food he ate. They were the hands that had held him when he was sick, that had braided my hair before his father's funeral, that had signed every permission slip and check for his entire life. But now, in the pristine light of his new world, they were just rough. They were an embarrassment. Little by little, I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. He and Jessica would talk about their friends, their parties, their plans for the future, and I wasn't a part of the conversation. I was just the person who refilled the iced tea pitcher. I'd sit in my worn-out armchair, the one Robert and I had bought together at a flea market, and I'd listen to them talk about a world so foreign to me, it might as well have been on another planet. They talked about skiing trips and summer homes. I thought about whether I could stretch the ground beef to last for 2 more meals. The gap between our worlds wasn't just a gap anymore. It was a canyon. And my son was firmly on the other side, waving at me from a distance. Then came the day the acceptance letter arrived. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope with the university's fancy crest on it. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was the culmination of everything. All the double shifts, all the aching nights, all the sacrifices, all squeezed into this one envelope. I was practically vibrating with excitement when David got home from school. I handed it to him, my hands trembling. "It's here, Davy. It's here." He took it from me, his expression cool. He tore it open, his eyes scanning the page. A slow smile spread across his face. "I got in," he said, almost calmly. "You got in," I cried, throwing my arms around him. Tears of joy and relief streamed down my face. "Oh, my boy, I'm so proud of you. We did it. We did it." He patted my back, a bit awkwardly. "Yeah, it's great," he said, pulling away. He looked at the letter again, then immediately pulled out his phone. "I have to call Jessica. She'll flip." And just like that, I was left standing alone in the middle of the living room. He walked into his bedroom, and I could hear his excited, animated voice through the closed door, sharing cry victory with Carrigal. The we I had joyfully proclaimed did not include me. The team was him and Jessica. I was just the sponsor, the silent investor. The crushing realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The joy of the moment evaporated, leaving a cold, bitter residue. Maybe I was just being paranoid? I asked myself that question 1,000 times. Was I being too sensitive? Mothers are supposed to let their children go, right? This is what independence looks like. But a cold fear crawled up my spine. This wasn't independence. This felt like erasure. A few weeks later, I was looking at the university's website. They had pictures of the beautiful, sprawling campus, the old brick buildings covered in ivy. They mentioned a parents' orientation weekend in the fall. My heart gave a little leap. I could go. I could see his dorm room, meet his professors, walk on the same paths he would walk every day. I brought it up at dinner that night. "Honey, I saw on the website that there's a weekend for parents before classes start. I was thinking I could take the bus down. Wouldn't that be fun? David stopped chewing. He put his fork down. He didn't look at me. He looked at his plate. Oh, that, he said, his voice flat. It's not really a big deal, Mom. Nobody really goes to that. It's mostly for, helicopter parents. Jessica, who was there for dinner again, chimed in with her bright, brittle voice. He's right, Eleanor. It's considered a little much. You want him to seem independent from the start, don't you? Her words were sweet as sugar, but they felt like a knife. Helicopter parent. Too much. Independent. They were code words. What they meant was, you don't belong here. You'll embarrass him. Oh, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Okay, I see. I felt a profound, suffocating humiliation. They had discussed this. They had a plan to manage me, to keep me contained, to keep my rough, working-class world from contaminating their shining new one. I didn't push. I didn't argue. What could I say? Please let me come. Please don't be ashamed of me. The words died in my throat. In that moment, something inside me started to harden. It was a small, cold kernel of resentment that I didn't even know was there. The summer before he left for college was the loneliest of my life. David got a job, not because he needed the money for school, I had that covered, but because Jessica's father had arranged an internship for him at a friend's law firm. He was building his resume. He'd leave in the morning, dressed in new clothes I'd paid for, and come back late at night, smelling of a world I had no part in. Our house was just a pit stop. He'd drop a pile of laundry by the machine without a word, and then leave to go out with Jessica and their friends. I was the maid service. I was the cook. I would wash and fold his new expensive shirts, and the smell of his cologne, a scent I didn't recognize, would make my heart ache with a loneliness so deep it felt like a physical illness. One weekend, I overheard him on the phone with Jessica. He was talking about a big end-of-summer barbecue at her family's country club. Yeah, my whole family will be there, he said. Aunts, uncles, everyone. A desperate, foolish hope sparked in me. Maybe this was it. Maybe they would finally invite me into their world. When he got off the phone, I tried to sound casual. A barbecue at the country club sounds fun, honey. What time should I be ready on Saturday? He froze. He looked at me with an expression of pure panic. It was the look of someone who had been caught in a lie. Oh, Mom, it's not really that kind of thing. It's for Jessica's family. But I heard you say your whole family would be there, I said, my voice trembling slightly. His face hardened. The panic was replaced by irritation. Anyang, her family, Mom. We're serious. This is for her dad's business partners and stuff. You wouldn't know anyone. You'd be bored. You wouldn't know anyone. You'd be bored. You wouldn't fit in. He didn't have to say the last part. I heard it loud and clear. It was the most definitive rejection yet. I was not his family. Not in the way that mattered anymore. I was a relic from a past he was desperate to escape. I just nodded. I turned and walked into my bedroom and shut the door. I didn't cry. I was past tears. I just sat on the edge of my bed, my hands clasped in my lap, and felt a profound, chilling numbness. The wall between us was now complete. He had laid the final brick. The day I drove him to the bus station to leave for college was gray and overcast, matching my heart. The whole ride was silent. What was there to say? When the bus pulled in, I gave him one last, desperate hug. I tried to pour all the love, all the hopes, all the prayers I had for him into that one embrace. He just hugged me back stiffly, for a moment, before pulling away. Okay, Mom, I gotta go. I'll call you when I get there. He handed me one last, giant check to deposit into his student account. It was the last of Robert's life insurance money, a fund I had guarded fiercely for 18 years. I had saved it for this exact moment. I watched him climb the steps of the bus without looking back. Not once. He found a seat next to the window, and I stood there on the curb, waving, hoping he'd turn, hoping for one last smile, one last acknowledgement. But he was already on his phone, probably texting Jessica. The bus pulled away, and I stood there until it was just a tiny speck in the distance, a single tear finally tracing a cold path down my cheek. The next 4 years were a blur of work and worry. The phone calls were my only lifeline to him, and little by little, that line began to fray. At first, during his freshman year, he'd call every Sunday. The calls were brief, full of talk about his classes and his new friends. He always sounded a little rushed. And every call, without fail, would end with, "Hey Mom, could you send a little extra this week? Books are more expensive than I thought." And I would say, "Of course, sweetie. Don't you worry." I took on a weekend job cleaning a small office building on Saturday and Sunday nights. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. By his sophomore year, the Sunday calls stopped. They became sporadic, usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. They were shorter, more transactional. "Hey, it's me. Listen, I'm a little short on rent. Could you help me out?" The pretense of a social call was gone. I was a bank, an ATM that dispensed money and unconditional love. The question, "How are you, Mom?" never came. Once, I tried to tell him about my life. "Mrs. Gable's daughter just had a baby, a beautiful little girl," I started, desperate for a connection. "That's nice, Mom," he said, his voice distant. I could hear keyboard clicking in the background. "Listen, I gotta run. Professor has me swamped. Just let me know when you've sent the money, okay?" Click. Dot. He was gone. The humiliation was a slow poison. I'd send the money transfers from the Western Union at the grocery store, my hands shaking as I filled out the forms. The amount was often more than I earned in a week. To cover it, I started selling things. First, it was my mother's old jewelry, things I had treasured. Then, a few pieces of furniture that I could live without. Finally, with a pain so sharp it felt like a part of my soul was being ripped out, I sold Robert's old watch. The one he was wearing the day he died. I held it in my hand one last time, the cold metal a stark reminder of a love that was simple and true. I sold it to pay for David's spring break trip with Jessica's family to the Caribbean. He sent me a postcard. It said, "Having a great time. Wish you were here." The irony was so bitter, it made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. Was it all my fault? I tortured myself with that question in the dead of night, when the house was silent and my loneliness was a living, breathing entity in the room with me. Did I enable this? Did my sacrifice teach him that my resources, my energy, my love, were infinite and to be taken for granted? Or was this just who he was? A boy so blinded by ambition and the allure of wealth that he had cut out the heart of the person who gave him life? I didn't have any answers. I just kept going. Because what else could I do? He was my son. My promise to him, whispered over his crib all those years ago, was ironclad. Eventually, things started to feel wrong on a deeper level. The calls became demands. The tone, once just rushed, was now tinged with an ugly edge of entitlement. During his junior year, he called me in a panic. "Mom, I need $1,000. Now." $1,000? I gasped. My heart sank like a stone. I didn't have it. I simply did not have it. "David, what on earth for?" "My laptop crashed. It's got all my papers on it. I need a new one for finals. If I don't get it, I could fail." His voice was sharp, accusatory, as if the laptop crashing was somehow my fault. I was scraping by, eating canned soup for dinner most nights. $1,000 was an impossible sum. "Honey, I don't know if I can get that much together so quickly." There was a cold, hard silence on the other end of the line. Then he said the words that shattered what little was left of my heart. "What do you mean you don't know? What have you been doing with all the money I sent home?" I froze. The phone felt like a block of ice against my ear. What money, David?" "The money from my internship. I send a check home every month for you to deposit, for safekeeping." My mind raced. He had mentioned sending checks, but he always said they were to be deposited directly into his own student savings account, the one I was a co-signer on, for his expenses. He never, ever said any of it was for me. It was his money, for his life. David, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, that money goes into your account, for your tuition, your rent, your food. You told me to use it for your bills. Well, you shouldn't have used all of it, he snapped. You should have been saving some of it. Gosh, Mom, what do I have to do? Manage your finances for you from 3 states away. Just figure it out. Put it on a credit card or something? I don't have a credit card, David, I whispered. My credit was ruined years ago after Robert's death from medical bills that the insurance didn't cover. He let out a long, frustrated sigh. The sound was pure condescension. Of course you don't. Okay, fine. I'll ask Jessica. Her parents will help. Just forget it. He hung up. I stood in my silent kitchen, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. He had twisted reality. He had painted me as incompetent, as a financial burden, when every cent I had in the world, every ounce of my strength, had been poured into him. And worse, he had turned to Ethan. He would rather be indebted to Jessica's parents than have a moment of understanding or empathy for me. The humiliation was absolute. It was a dark, suffocating blanket. In that moment, I knew. I had lost him completely. He wasn't my son anymore. I was a problem to be managed, a shabby, inconvenient piece of his past. The final year was mostly silence. He had what he needed. Jessica's family, I presumed, had taken over as his primary sponsors. The calls stopped. I only knew he was still alive and well because I would see pictures on Jessica's social media page, which I checked obsessively, a masochistic ritual of my own making. Pictures of him and Jessica on a boat, at a fancy restaurant, with her smiling, perfect family. He looked happy. He looked like he belonged. In all the pictures, he was smiling. Then, 2 months before graduation, the phone rang. It was him. My heart gave a stupid, hopeful leap. His voice was bright, cheerful. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. Mom, guess what? Nee, see. No, nee. Well, what is it, honey? I asked, my own voice thick with unshed tears. I'm graduating with honors. Magna cum laude. Oh, David. The pride? It was still there, buried under all the hurt. It surged up, pure and fierce. That's wonderful. That's my boy. Yes, so. The ceremony is May 17th. I'm sending you an invitation. Of course, I want you to be there. The relief that washed over me was so powerful. I had to sit down. He wants me there. The 4 years of pain, the loneliness, the humiliation, maybe it was all worth it. Maybe this was the moment everything would be healed. Maybe seeing me in the crowd, watching him achieve the dream I had worked so hard for, would make him remember. I'll be there, I said, my voice choking up. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I spent the next 2 months in a state of nervous, hopeful excitement. I took out the simple but elegant navy blue dress I had bought for the occasion years ago, a hopeful purchase, and made sure it was perfect. I booked my bus ticket. I even went to the salon in town and had my hair properly cut and styled for the first time in what felt like a decade. I wanted to look nice. I wanted to make him proud. Or, at the very least, not make him ashamed. The week before the ceremony, he called me. His voice was different. Tense. Hey, Mom. So, about graduation. He started, and my stomach immediately clenched. Yes, sweetie. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. It's just, Jessica's parents, they're throwing this huge dinner party at their club right after the ceremony. It's a really big deal. Her father's partners are going to be there. Some really important people. It's kind of a networking opportunity for. Oh, that's wonderful, David, I said, my heart soaring again. I can't wait to meet them all. There was a pause. A long, terrible, damning pause. Well, he said, and the word was heavy, dragged out. Here's the thing. It's a very formal, seated dinner. It's really for the graduates and the people who have been, instrumental in their professional development. Their sponsors. My sponsors died. The word hit me like a physical slap. Yeah. It was the same word I had used in my own mind. A clinical, transactional word. A word for a benefactor, not a mother. I don't understand, I said, though I understood perfectly. My blood ran cold. He took a deep breath, the sound full of impatience. Look, Mom. It's a very specific kind of crowd. You'd be uncomfortable. You wouldn't enjoy it. Maybe it would be best if you just came to the ceremony, and then you could head back home afterwards. We can celebrate, just you and me, another time. When I come home for a visit. The lie was so blatant, so insulting. Another time. A visit. A visit he would never make. A celebration that would never happen. He was uninviting me. He was telling me, in the politest, cruelest way possible, that my role was over. I had served my purpose. I had gotten him to the finish line. Now, I was to disappear before I could embarrass him at the victory party. My throat was so tight I could barely speak. All the fight went out of me. All the hope, all the excitement of the past 2 months, shriveled and died. There was nothing left but a vast empty ache. Okay, David, I heard myself say, my voice a hollow echo. I understand. Great, he said, the relief in his voice like a final twist of the knife. It's just better this way. I'll see you at the ceremony then. Can't wait. He hung up. I held the phone to my ear for a full minute, listening to the dead air. I looked at the navy blue dress hanging on my closet door. I looked at the bus ticket on my dresser. And for the first time, the cold, hard kernel of resentment that had been growing inside me for years finally cracked open. And what emerged was not sadness. It was a white-hot, furious rage. I sat there on the edge of my bed for a long, long time. The house was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. For 4 years, I had swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every bit of casual cruelty. I had absorbed it all, telling myself it was the price of his happiness. I had let him drain my bank account, my energy, and my spirit, all in the name of a mother's love. And for what? So he could politely ask me to become invisible. I looked at my hands. My rough, red, swollen hands. The hands he was so ashamed of. I thought of Robert. I thought of the promise I made to him on his deathbed, to always be strong for our boy. But was this strength? To let myself be erased? No. This wasn't strength. This was martyrdom. And I was done being a martyr. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break. It shattered. It exploded. And all the pieces rearranged themselves into something new. Something hard and sharp and clear. The rage wasn't just a hot flash anymore. It was a cold, pure clarity. I finally saw it all. I saw the years of manipulation. I saw the entitlement I had mistaken for ambition. I saw the cold calculation I had excused as youthful thoughtlessness. He didn't just want me to skip the dinner. He wanted me to attend the ceremony as a silent, anonymous spectator in the crowd, a testament to his success, and then scurry away like a mouse before I could taint his real celebration. I was a prop. A box to be ticked on his list of accomplishments. Got Mom to come to graduation, ceremony only. A laugh escaped my lips. It was a strange, harsh sound in the quiet room. Oh, no. No. He wanted me at the ceremony? Fine. I would be at the ceremony. But I would not be invisible. I would not be a ghost. He had spent years making me feel small. He was about to find out just how big I could be. The next few days, I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The sadness was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. I didn't cancel my bus ticket. I didn't put the navy blue dress away. Instead, I took it out and looked at it with new eyes. It was a nice dress. Humble, That she knew. Respectable. It was the dress of a woman who didn't want to cause a fuss. It was the wrong dress. I went to my closet and pulled out a box from the very back, a box I hadn't opened since before Robert died. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was the dress I had worn to my brother's wedding almost 30 years ago. It was a vibrant crimson red, the color of life, of fire, of rage. It was bold. It was loud. It was everything I had stopped allowing myself to be. I tried it on. It was a little snug, but it still fit. Looking at myself in the mirror, I didn't see a tired, worn-out old cleaning woman. I saw Eleanor Vance. I saw a woman who was about to take her power back. I wasn't just going to the ceremony. I was going to the dinner. Dinner. The one he had so carefully uninvited me from. I didn't have an invitation, of course. But I didn't need one. I had something better. I had the truth. I spent the next few days preparing. I gathered every bank statement from the last 4 years. Every Western Union receipt. Every credit card statement from before my credit was ruined, showing the debts I'd paid off for him. I packed them all neatly into a large envelope. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them, but they felt like armor. They were the physical proof of my sacrifice. The receipts for my broken heart. The day of the graduation, I woke up before the sun. I put on the red dress. I did my makeup carefully. I put on the simple pearl earrings Robert had given me for our first anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time and took a deep breath. I felt a tremor of fear, but underneath it was a bedrock of certainty. I was not doing this out of spite. I was doing this for me. For every mother who has ever been made to feel small. For the promise I made to my husband to be strong. This was what strength truly looked like. The bus ride was long, but I didn't feel it. I just looked out the window, my mind calm and clear. When I arrived at the university, it was even more beautiful than the pictures. Students in black gowns and caps were everywhere, buzzing with excitement, their families beaming with pride. For a moment, a pang of what could have been shot through me. This was the day I had dreamed of, but it was a poisoned dream now. I found the football stadium where the ceremony was being held and found a seat, not in the back, but right down in the front section, reserved for families. I saw him. My David, sitting with the other graduates. He hadn't seen me yet. He was laughing with his friends, looking handsome and confident in his gown. And a few rows in front of me, I saw them. Jessica's family. Her father, a tall, imposing man in an expensive suit. Her mother, elegant and coiffed. And Jessica herself, looking like a princess. They were the picture of success. The ceremony was long. Speeches were made. Names were called. When they called out, David Robert Vance, magna cum laude, my heart did a painful flip. In spite of everything, a tear of pride rolled down my cheek. I had done that. My work, my love, my sacrifice. It had put him on that stage. After the ceremony, it was chaos. A sea of black gowns and happy, shouting families. I saw David get swarmed by Jessica and her parents. They were hugging him, her father patting him on the back with a proprietary air. I stood up and started walking towards them. As I got closer, I saw David's eyes scan the crowd. He was looking for me, I realized. A quick, nervous scan, probably to make sure I was keeping my end of the bargain and preparing to leave. Then his eyes locked on mine, and his face fell. It wasn't just surprise, it was horror. Pure, undiluted horror. He saw the red dress. He saw me walking towards them, not away. His smile vanished, replaced by a mask of panic. I reached the little group just as Jessica's father was saying, "Well, son, let's get over to the club. The champagne is waiting." David's eyes were wide, darting between me and them. He was cornered. I saw him make a split-second decision. He chose his side. I opened my mouth to say his name, but Jessica's mother spoke first. She looked at me, her gaze sweeping over my bright red dress with a faint, dismissive curl of her lip. "Oh, hello, can we help you?" Her tone was polite, but clear. "You are an interruption." You do not belong here. We. I looked straight at David. I gave him one last chance. One last chance to be the boy I had raised, not the man he had become. My heart was pounding. Please, David. Just say it. Say, this is my mother. He didn't. He looked at me, his face pale. Then he turned to Jessica's parents and gave a small, apologetic laugh. His voice was strained, unfamiliar. Oh, her. Don't worry about it. She's the help. From back home. She must have gotten confused about the arrangements. My mother couldn't make it today. She's unwell. The world went silent. The cheering of the crowd, the breeze, the birds, it all faded away. The only thing I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. The help. He didn't just deny me. He didn't just lie. He demoted me. He reduced the woman who gave him life, who sacrificed everything for him, to the status of a servant. He looked at my rough hands and my tired face, and he told the most profound, most soul-crushing lie he could possibly conjure. He had killed the memory of his mother to impress these wealthy strangers. In that moment, the fight back began. Something cold and powerful rose up in me. The hurt was still there, a great gaping wound. But the rage was a fire that cauterized it. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I smiled. It was a slow, deliberate smile. It didn't reach my eyes. I looked directly at David, and I held his terrified gaze. Unwell? I said, my voice dangerously calm and clear. It cut through the air. That's funny, because I feel better than I have in years. Namdanikan. I turned my smile to Jessica's parents. It was a brilliant, beaming smile now. I extended my hand to her father. Hello, you must be Mr. and Mrs. Albright. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Eleanor Vance. I'm David's mother. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Jessica's father, who had been about to shake my hand, froze, his hand hovering in midair. Jessica's mother's polite mask shattered, replaced by utter confusion. Jessica's jaw dropped. And David, oh, the look on David's face. It was a symphony of terror, shame, and fury. He looked like a trapped animal. Mom, he hissed, his voice a low, desperate whisper. What are you doing? Doing? I said, my voice still light and pleasant. I turned my gaze back to him, the smile never leaving my face. Why, I'm celebrating my son's graduation. You know, the son I raised by myself after his father died. The son whose every dream I funded by working 3 jobs. The son who just graduated with honors because I scrubbed other people's floors so he could have the best education money could buy. Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. I saw him flinch. I then turned back to the Albrights, who were staring, utterly dumbfounded. You know, I continued, my tone now confidential, like I was sharing a funny little secret. It's so amusing. David just told you I was the hired help. In a way, he's right. I've been working for him his whole life. But I wasn't hired. I did it for free. I did it out of love. I opened my purse. I took out the thick envelope full of receipts. I didn't hand it to them. I just held it. In fact, I said, tapping the envelope, I have the receipts. 4 years of them. Every dollar. The money for his rent, his books, his food. Even the money for that lovely spring break trip he took with you, all to the Caribbean. Did he tell you that trip was paid for by his dead father's watch? It was a beautiful watch. A collector's item. Jessica gasped. Her face went pale. She looked at David, a new, horrified understanding dawning in her eyes. I wasn't finished. I looked straight into David's soul. He told you I was unwell. That's another funny thing. The only thing I'm sick of, David, is your ingratitude. I'm sick of your shame. And I am most certainly sick of you using my love and my sacrifice as a stepping stone, only to try and kick me off the ladder once you reach the top. I took a step closer to him. My voice dropped, becoming low and intense. For his ears only. You denied me. You called me a servant in front of the people you want to impress. You buried me to make yourself look better. You will regret this moment for the rest of your life. Not because I am going to make a scene, but because you are. You are going to have to explain this lie to them. You are going to have to look your future father-in-law in the eye and explain why you called your own mother. The help and ain't going to stand right here and watch you do it. And then I did the most powerful thing I could think of. I fell silent. I just stood there, in my bright red dress, a small triumphant smile on my face, and waited. I had laid the truth out, like a banquet. Now, they would all have to feast on it. The power was no longer his. It was mine. The whole, explosive, liberating power of the truth. The silence that hung in the air was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. I didn't move. I just stood there, holding that envelope of receipts like a scepter, my gaze fixed on my son. I watched the color drain from his face, then return as a blotchy, panicked red. He was drowning, and I was the one who had finally pushed him into the water. Mr. Albright, Jessica's father, was the first to recover. He was a businessman, and I could practically see the gears turning in his head. He looked from my defiant face to David's crumbling one, then to the horrified expression on his own daughter's face. He dropped his hand, which had been hovering in the air, and his expression hardened into one of cool, clinical assessment. The warmth was gone. "Is this true, David?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. It was not the voice of a future father-in-law. It was the voice of a CEO interrogating a fraudulent employee. David opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stared at me, his eyes pleading, begging me to take it back, to undo what had been done. But I just gave him a small, sad shake of my head. The time for that was over. It's a misunderstanding, David stammered, his voice cracking. It was a pathetic defense, and we all knew it. Mr. Albright's eyes narrowed. He looked at me again, then back at David. "A misunderstanding. She has receipts, son. She claims you sold your dead father's watch to go on vacation with my daughter. Is that a misunderstanding, too?" Jessica let out a small, choked sob. "David, you told me that watch was from your trust fund." She took a step away from him, as if he were contagious. The foundation of their perfect, shiny life had just cracked wide open, and she was seeing the ugly truth in the fissures. David couldn't answer. He just stood there, exposed and humiliated, the beautiful tapestry of lies he had woven for 4 years unraveling at his feet. He looked at me one last time, his eyes swimming with a toxic cocktail of rage and shame. And then he did the only thing he could do. He turned and fled. He literally pushed his way through the crowd of celebrating families and ran, his black gown flapping behind him like the wings of a broken bird. Jessica's mother put a comforting arm around her daughter, who was now openly crying. Mr. Albright just watched David run, his face a mask of pure disgust. He then turned his steely gaze to me. I expected anger. I expected him to tell me to leave, but he didn't. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He saw the red dress, yes, but he also saw the strength behind it. He saw the pain in my eyes, but he also saw the victory. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a nod of respect. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice now quiet and devoid of its earlier anger. "I am profoundly sorry. On behalf of my family, I apologize for what you've just been through." He then looked over at his wife and daughter. "I think we will be skipping this celebration at the club today." And with that, they turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone on the manicured lawn. The envelope of receipts felt heavy in my hand. I hadn't even needed to show them. The truth had been enough. I never saw David again. Not in person, anyway. About a week later, a package arrived at my house. There was no return address, but I knew who it was from. Inside was a cashier's check for a very large sum of money, enough to cover every dime I had ever spent on him, and then some. There was also a small, velvet box. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was Robert's watch. He must have bought it back from wherever he'd sold it. There was no note, no apology, no explanation. Just the money and the watch. It was his final transaction. He was settling his account. It wasn't an apology. It was a severance payment. He was buying his freedom from me, paying me off to disappear from his life for good. And you know what? I took it. I cashed that check, and I put that watch back in its box, where it belongs. I had earned it. I heard through the grapevine of small-town gossip that he and Jessica broke up, of course. Her family wanted nothing more to do with a young man who could build a life on such a cruel and profound lie. I heard he moved out west somewhere, started a new life where no one knew his past. I hope he's happy. I truly do. But his happiness is no longer my responsibility. That day, I lost a son. But I found myself. I found Eleanor Vance again. The woman who was more than just a mother, more than just a cleaning lady, more than just a widow. I was a woman with a spine of steel, just like my father had taught me. The lesson I learned was a hard one, but it was a vital one. You can pour your entire soul into your children, but you cannot let them empty you. Your love should be a well, not a bucket that they can carry away and leave you with nothing. You have to keep a little bit of that love, a little bit of that strength for yourself. Your worth is not defined by how much you can sacrifice for others. It's defined by the respect you demand for yourself. And so, to anyone out there listening, if you are feeling small, if you are being harassed by someone you love, whether it's your child, your partner, or a friend, please listen to this old woman. Do not let your light be extinguished so that theirs can shine brighter. You are not a prop in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. Find your red dress, whatever that may be. Find your voice. And speak your truth, even if it trembles. Because your truth has power. It is the one thing that is truly, completely yours. Thank you for letting me share this piece of my heart with you all today. It feels lighter now. If you found some strength in my story, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you turn on that notification bell so you don't miss our next story time together. And please, if you feel comfortable, share your own story in the comments below. Reading them reminds me, and everyone else, that we are never truly alone in our struggles. Love you all. This is Grandma Eleanor, and I'll see you in the next story.